no further information. So that might be need to fix that one.
All right, any other changes? All right, I will entertain a motion to approve the February minutes.
I make a motion.
Second.
I have a motion by Kelly Darby and a second by Jill Kinman. Because we're on Zoom, if we can see you, please raise your hand and say aye. And if you are not showing your camera, please let me know if you approve by saying aye.
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 Anyone opposed, say nay. All right, that motion passes. Next on our agenda is the 2021-2022 executive officer elections. The slate of officers that we put forward at the last meeting was the chair to be Judge Aurora Jones, the vice chair. I don't remember who we said for that.
It was Kelly Darby.
Was it Kelly or Kelly, were you vice chair or were you secretary?
Yes, I remember it. It was vice chair, and that's how it's in the minutes as well.
Okay. And then, so then the secretary, remind me who the secretary was.
I believe that was Hillary Cedarquist.
That's right. So I will entertain a motion to accept the slate of officers.
Motion to accept.
Is there a second?
Second.
I've got Michelle Andrew with a second. I could see her mouth moving and her hand up. So is there any discussion on that slate? All right, with that, I will, and anyone who, sorry, let's try this again. Okay, we have a motion and a second for approval of the slate of officers. Everyone who would like to move forward with that, raise a hand and unmute and say aye.
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 Aye. Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Seeing none, that motion passes. Congratulations to the new slate. The next order of business is to make our recommendations. We need to get a final review and approval of these recommendations. So we've got the recommendations in a Word file right now. And so the recommendations from the executive committee, there's only one. That recommendation would be to allow each trustee to appoint one new member to the SHAC each year. And the terms would move to a rolling 3-year term. So what we would need to change is to appoint the members at the trustee level. Our bylaws would then change so that our terms would be 3 years instead of 2. And I think that this gives the trustees, it gives them one person to appoint every year so that they always know that at the same time every year, someone's going to have a seat. Right now, they're staggered terms and not everyone has a seat. And sometimes there's one trustee with 2 seats. So this really helps streamline the process of putting people on the SHAC. And I think it will make the SHAC more cohesive, and then year after year, it will be more structured. So I will entertain any discussion on that.
Jen, I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
I thought our terms were already for 3 years. Was that a change that you were considering making, converting it to 2, and then you decided to change it back to 3?
Mandy, can you help with
that's
that one?
true.
It's my understanding there were always 2.
I thought it was 3 as well.
I'm reading the bylaws right now and it says members' term shall be for 3 years.
Judge Aurora, do you remember when we made that change, or if we did?
I don't remember making a change to the terms, but I'll look up the most recent version I have. But if that's what the bylaw says, then it must have been in there at some point. I know we've talked about it, but the last change that I remember making was just to clarify the committees.
I think that change was made under me when I was chair, but I don't quite remember. Like,
Was
the
it made
year.
to 3 or to 2?
I thought it was always 2 when we made it to 3.
Yeah, Monica, I think I remember that as well. I can't remember which year.
I can't remember. Sorry.
Okay, I turned my video off so that you guys don't have to see me looking at my other screen.
Does anybody know, I have a question about the process of the appointments. Like, does the board president like put it on the agenda, or how does that process work?
I think it's usually a consent item that they kind of discuss beforehand, and then it's just
They just kind of run through.
I think Mandy's probably best to speak to that. I don't see her here. She was on a second ago. So in the last couple of years, then there has been a request put out for anyone who'd like to apply for the SHAC.
Okay.
And those applications are all taken together and they're given to the board secretary. And that board secretary then gives them to each of the trustees. The trustees can, they look through them and then they can decide if they'd like to appoint someone to their place or not. And then if they choose to appoint, they usually appoint all at the same meeting. Sometimes they don't want to and they push it a meeting or two till they make their decision. I believe that the agenda item is added to the agenda by the board secretary. So it's not a president thing to
No, it
put
just
on,
wasn't
if I
sure.
understand.
Because the person who appointed me is no longer on the board, and so I had been having some questions arise in my head about what the process is. So
Oh, sure. So whoever appointed you was elected to a place on the board. And so you have been appointed by that place. So it's based on your trustee place.
oh, so then they'll be responsible for just either reappointing me or replacing me.
That's right. That's right.
Okay.
Yeah. So whoever
Thanks.
holds that place today. Yeah.
Got it.
I think
Okay.
Mandy made it back too. Mandy, we were discussing how the SHAC members get put on the agenda for the trustees. Do you want to speak to that?
Sure. So when and I'm sorry, my internet is unstable, so I'm going to keep trying. And if I need to, I'll go back to the office to log in. But can you all hear me, Jen?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. So each trustee has 3 spots on the SHAC, and at the expiration of the term, they are asked, or when someone resigns, they're asked to name another nominee to go before the board for approval. And typically that approval is pretty straightforward. They have in the past respected the nominees that are put forth and
I think we're losing you, Mandy.
Yeah. We can't hear her anymore. But I think I know what happened as far as the bylaws go now that I'm looking back into the records. Jen, if you want me to explain that when Mandy gets done, if we get her back. Okay. All right, it looks like she's not able to come back.
Yeah, go ahead and speak to that. And if she comes
Sure.
back, then we will move back to her.
So in the 2014, 2015 version of the bylaws, it was still 2 years. And I think under Dr. Faulkner, we did make that change, but it never actually got the hard copy of the bylaws amended. And so then we went to do the amendment to do the correct naming of the committees. And at that time, we went ahead and amended that 3-year term piece as well. And so it all got put together, which is multiple SHAC revisions, but in one version in 2018. And that is the current version that we made sure got posted. So what may have happened is just the cross between getting the change to the 3-year terms into the bylaws. Probably a version of the bylaws wasn't out there that had that change yet until we actually did the amendment that also amended the titles of the committees. So it was probably just confusion.
So we are at 3 years, correct?
Are at 3 years. Yes, we are. Because it did occur. We just didn't get it into the bylaws. And that was the big circumstance I recall now.
Okay.
Jen, I wanted to ask a question.
Sure.
If we're approaching the end of a term and we're interested in staying on SHAC, is that an option, and what's the process to do that?
Sure. So we do have a term limit. I believe that's 2 terms for normal members. You can do another term if you join the executive board. So you could get a total of 3 terms if you are chair, vice chair, or secretary. And then you've got to roll off for 1 year and you can come back on. So I think you can serve for a total of 6 years, sit a year out, and then you can come back for 6 more, or 9 if you take an executive position.
And do you express that interest for a second term to the trustee that holds that place, or what's that process?
Right, you can do that. You can also submit an application just like everyone else and notate that you have been on the committee before. You can reach out directly to that trustee, whatever you'd like to do to make sure you get back on is what you can do.
Jen, the time limits are new to me. I thought the time limits were just the number of terms you could serve on the executive committee.
Judge Jones, do you have the bylaws pulled up by chance?
I did. What was the question again?
I don't know that there are time limits for the number of terms you can serve. Can you just bear? Because if there are, Michelle and I are probably done like a while ago.
It says member terms shall be for 3 years.
Uh-huh.
I'm not seeing specifically. It's on page 2 of our bylaws. It's on our website.
Yeah, I think it's just the executive committee. You can only serve so many back to back.
I'm reading the bylaws right now. Article 6 has a note about the executive people who cannot serve 2 consecutive terms, not more than 2 consecutive terms in the same office.
Right.
Page 3.
But as far as general terms, it doesn't say anything like that.
Okay,
nope.
I thought that we did have limits, but that was, well, it doesn't matter. You said page 3?
I put the link for where our bylaws are for anybody who wants to take a look.
Oh, may not serve more than 2 terms in the same office. Let me, I'm gonna get Mandy on the phone real quick. Give me 1 second.
I'm also seeing here in Article 6, that talks about how long you can be on the executive board. It doesn't say anything about regular terms, but I'll keep looking.
It is as long as they are reappointed. So every 3 years, it would be up to the trustee.
Okay, can you guys hear Mandy? Okay, so basically what you said is it's up to the trustees and there's not a specific limit to the number of times you can serve. I must have been confused. Okay.
Yeah, we could double check the bylaws, Jen, but I'm not aware of a term limit for SHAC members.
Okay. Okay. So I'm not sure that that changes our recommended policy because we're just asking them to change the expiration of the terms so that everyone appoints one person every year.
I think what would have to happen if the SHAC wants to go that way is there would, in my mind, maybe need to be some kind of a system for sorting the current SHAC members. Maybe a draw among the 3, for example, who were appointed by President Weir, or to get the terms staggered.
Right. So I think if we go ahead and do this year and we ask for the expiration, because some of us were carried over for another year because of COVID, then the terms should even out exactly how they need to. Does anybody have a problem with that?
Can you just restate it, Jen? I'm sorry.
Sure. So the policy would be to amend the bylaws of the SHAC so that members serve a 3-year term, and then each trustee appoints 1 member per year to serve the 3-year term. So then everybody rolls off in a more reasonable fashion so that not a huge chunk of members roll off at the same time. So our policy is right here. That's what we would be recommending. And we can change that if we want to.
The only challenge I would see is depending how many people have a term expiring this year and might want to stay. Do we have enough opportunities for that to still happen, changing to this?
My apologies, Jennifer. Did you say something that I need to change?
Oh, I don't know how many of us have terms expiring this year, but if it's a high number and those people also would like to return in a high number, that's the only challenge I would see with making this shift. So do you know how many people have term expirations?
So the majority of the terms expire this year. And that was the real challenge that we found. So if you see right here, 21s, all these 21s are the ones that are expiring. And so it's just a way for us to make sure, I mean, they're all 21, 22s. So we can make sure that those people that are appointed this year get their full 3 years. I don't see that there's going to be any issue with any of the term expirations the way they are. So we'll just need to ask for that reappointment. So we need to vote on this recommended policy. Do we have a motion and a second on approving the recommended policy to move forward?
Can we visually see it somehow? Can you, well, is that what's pulled up in front of us?
Yeah, I'll admit I'm still a little bit confused. I don't know why.
You're confused on the term limits?
Maybe it's because maybe I just don't know how to use. I can't.
It's
actually
confusing
see.
because we're seeing like on one side of the page is the roster, sort of the suggested term expiration, but on the other side, it's like a minutes from last year's Human Sexuality Committee, and I'm kind of confused at the document that I'm looking at.
There we go.
Okay.
Do we have a document that shows who is up for, you know, who's rolling off? And I got confused with the COVID as to when term limits.
Yeah, I'm confused too.
are
I
up.
don't think I actually remember
So-
when I'm up, rolling
Yeah.
off or not.
So we do not have that document to share. It remains with the trustees and with the board chair. I'm sorry, with the board secretary.
We have that document. We were given that document. That
We've had one in the past that has like exactly, you know, name and who is there, but
yeah, it's not private, it's public, you know, information. So it's somewhere.
So I appreciate that. And I do understand what you're saying. I tried to get that document and was told that I could not get that document. And this was the best that I could do. And then I could not put names in here because we didn't want that to become a public document. So if you'd like to submit the public information request to get it, I'm happy to let you.
That is
I just like to know when my term is up. Like I don't,
Jen,
it's
can you
not
hear
that I
me?
need to see
It was also sent earlier in the year.
everybody else.
Yeah, it was sent.
We got a
it's not-
version sent to us, but it didn't have all the details about the term expiration. It was sent in January, but it just lists us by name, our role, whether a community member or parent, and our learning community. It
No,
doesn't
we
list
got
us.
it. We got it in September.
Yeah.
We received it in September, and it did have all those details. I will look in my email, but I actually referred to it last night
Jen.
during our subcommittee meeting.
Sure. So am I
can you
understanding that
hear
you
me?
guys would not like to make the motion on this and would like to pass this through to possibly the next year or not have this recommendation at all?
And if we talk about next year, Jen, I'm happy to make it a priority that we get appropriate staggering because our recommendation to make sure it gets staggered might be more detailed once we do get the details and look at, you know, we're asking for, you know, an additional year or whatever for specific places to stagger it in a way that's going to make sense for us. And I'm happy to take that on as kind of a number one priority.
Sure. If
I
we
wanted to ask
don't
a
want to
question.
stagger like one per trustee, so what we're going to do is push this down the road, and they're going to be able to add more parents next year and more people to the SHAC that'll serve a 3-year term, and then Some of these we're not going to be able to stagger like we want, like we're asking them. And so that pushing it 1 year will muddy the water a little bit. So now's the time to do it if we're going to do it. And if we don't want to do it, that's fine. I just need to take it out of the recommendation packet.
What is the holdup? Is it just because people are not,
So
like,
we
people are
need to
confused?
stop what we're doing. And I apologize to all of the members. I keep hearing everyone talking over one another. So let's please use the raise your hand button in the Zoom function so that we can all talk one at a time. I'm happy to give everyone their time, but please use the raise your hand button. So I'm not seeing any hands raised, but I do see, Jennifer Faulkner, that you have asked to speak on this topic in the chat. Please give us your thoughts.
I already did, so thank you, but I actually don't see a raise your hand option in my Zoom viewing. Can you tell me where it should be? But I already asked my question.
Thank you. That would be, I don't remember the name of the person who is in the professional development box here, who was speaking at the very beginning of the meeting. If you will unmute yourself and let us know where that raise your hand is.
It's under, if you look at the bottom of your screen, it says reactions. It's a little happy face, like an emoji. If you click on that, it then says raise your hand.
So Monica, you just asked where that, in the chat, you asked where the conflict of interest is in section 4. This is where I see it on the bylaws that are on the website. So it looks like they're on page 2. Hillary, you said you found the list of folks from the fall. Did you find where the terms are stated on that?
Yeah, I found am I unmuted? Yeah, I found the term expirations. I couldn't see the graph very well on the screen, so now I am seeing how half is 2020 and half is 2022 with like nothing in between. Or is that because people were reappointed? Like, were there people supposed to expire in 2020 that didn't because of COVID?
So at the end of COVID, so COVID happened in March of 2020, and in May of 2020, when everything was still crazy and we didn't know what was going to happen, the SHAC asked that our bylaws be suspended, and everyone was given an additional 1-year term so that we could finish our recommendations. Okay. So that's why everyone has kind of stuck through to 2021, and that's why the term limits are different than what you found.
I mean, and if it's allowed, I mean, I could hold this up to the camera.
Sure, go for it.
Because some people were
I'm-
asking, does anybody want me to?
Right.
I don't know if you can see it. Is this helpful at all?
Right, I believe that's probably the one from 2020 when
Oh, old, too
19
old.
and 20. Mhm.
At least people who are appointed then can see the limits. So,
Right, and I'm guessing that based on the trustees that we saw.
yeah,
when we
because
put
some of
that
them aren't
closest.
trustees anymore.
Mhm.
But that's the most
Right.
recent one I had. Okay. It helped me to
Okay.
see the years, though, how they weren't staggered. Now I understand it better.
Sure.
Jen, I have a digital copy. I can forward it to you for this year.
Okay. Okay, so do we want to move forward with this recommendation, or would we like to forego this recommendation?
I'll make a motion to move forward with this recommendation.
Do I have a second? Go ahead, Snehal.
I'll second it. And in the discussion, I wanted to ask a question as well.
Sure, you feel free, please.
So I think there is confusion because people are trying to find out whose term is expiring and what's the process if they wanted to come back on the SHAC. And I'm trying to understand what was the reason why the executive team put this recommendation forward. I think if we all know it, we would be able to make the decision better.
Right, so the reason is because there was a large number of people who rolled off of the SHAC at one time. So there was 1 year where a whole bunch of people would roll off. And then the second year, there would be just a few appointed. And then there was a year where basically no one was appointed because the terms didn't line up correctly. There was also some infighting with the former trustees because they would have someone that they felt was a good fit for SHAC, and maybe they didn't have a place available for them to serve. And so they were stuck with whoever was appointed by their predecessor, and maybe they didn't align with the same views. So it was something just to help put some more structure to what they're doing.
Thank you for saying that. And did you, did we get any input from Ms. Estes as well? Because she's been running this for a while.
Yeah, so Mandy she is very supportive of this. She actually wanted to help form the recommendation when it very first came up. And she thought that now was the best time to do it because we were kind of in a special case. We're in a special part of COVID where we can make this change, and it's not as big of an impact as it would be in a year from now, or if it was 2 years back.
I think that makes it more clear. Thank you so much for sharing that.
No problem. Any other discussion?
Yeah, I have a quick question. It looks like in order to get...
Go ahead.
Oh, it looks like in order to get this staggering going, that whoever gets appointed for, let's say, this next term will be warned that their term will be extra short in order to properly stagger. Am I understanding that correctly?
No, we would not need to shorten any terms given the expiration. So there would be some that we would say, well, let me take that back. So each place is going to have one that's appointed 2 years and one that's appointed 3 years. And that's just because of COVID, how that kind of staggered out. Some of them would have appointed 2 and then not had anybody the next year.
Right. And then does this scenario go away in a couple of years after? Will it always be that each trustee gets to appoint 1 2-year term and 1 3-year term, or is this just for the next couple of years?
No, it would just be for the next 1 year. So, and then it would work itself out after that. So that
Okay.
after everyone would serve 3.
Does there need to be a procedure for informing the nominees that they would get the 2-year term versus the 3-year term? Like, does there need to be a formal way of dealing with that, or does it not matter?
So I think that's up to Mandy and our whoever is the staff contact for SHAC. They would need to let that person know up front that that's the term they were appointed for.
Okay, thanks so much.
Yeah, you're welcome. Kelly Darby, you typed something in the chat, and I want to make sure that we get to your question.
Yeah, I was just, I don't have a problem with this at all. I was really just wondering if the fact that the bylaws require there to be a minimum of 10 members on at all times, if we go under that, does that not automatically trigger action by the board to appoint or do something? And if not, I mean, then this is an appropriate fill-in, but I would think then that we might recommend that the board adopt a process for that.
So I'm not sure of your question. The bylaws do state that we need to have 10 members at all times. We can't force the trustees to appoint a member at any given time. So these bylaws are really what the SHAC would like, but not necessarily what we have to have. So boards, the board of trustees sets the policy. We follow their policy. This is our internal guidelines that we like to have. So Section 5 size of the council says that when we go below 10, then we're asking the trustees to appoint quickly, to appoint outside of the term expiration time.
So you're saying that already does happen. It does trigger something.
That's right.
But then I just misunderstood the need. I misunderstood what the actual need was for this change, because I thought that it was that you had an issue with too many people dropping at once.
We do, yeah. Too many drop off in 1 year, and then so the terms aren't all the same currently.
Okay.
Some of them are off, and if we don't do this change and we go back to what it was before, then everyone with a term expiration in 2021 is going to roll off and have to either be reappointed or a new person will be appointed in their place.
Okay.
So there's quite a few.
I'm fine. I mean, I'm fine with the recommendation if this addresses an impending problem.
Is there any other discussion?
So, Jen, to add some more clarification, I think the reason we put this out there is in the past, we started a new school year and over half the SHAC was new because of the way the term limits. And so it felt like we spent most of the year just getting everyone caught up. When the hope is, while staggering it this way, there'll just be better continuation of all the SHAC activities going on, because we're not kind of starting from scratch every 2 years. And I think the way this discussion went, it just kind of went off a little bit, but it's really a very simple recommendation to just stagger it. Each trustee gets one thing each year. It's not really more complicated than that. And then in the past, if there are vacancies, like someone drops the SHAC because they, time commitments mid-year, Round Rock administration is usually pretty good at bugging the trustees to get that person or place reappointed before like the term lands up. So some of us maybe came in with, you have 6 months, or you only have a year left on your term because we were filling vacant spots. For the most part, we don't, in the past years, haven't really had many vacancies because the trustees have been pretty good just filling as needed too.
right, I'm not seeing any more discussion. So let's go ahead and vote on this one. If you guys would like to see this recommendation move forward, please raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed, say nay. All right, this motion passes to move forward to the trustees. The other recommendation from the executive committee is to allow the council PTA president to be a member of the SHAC. And this would also mean that the responsibility of the chair would be to abstain from voting unless there's a tiebreaker needed. And that's because there would be an even number of people on the SHAC if we did not do that. So is there any discussion about this? Snehal, do you have any input?
So I had applied for SHAC before I became council president, and I was filling a vacant spot, and I felt like I had served on SHAC of another district as well before this, and I was interested in this as the reason why I'd applied. And then I took on the council president job as well. I felt like, just like you and I had this discussion earlier, that this really serves our community well because the PTA gets the information. So I haven't discussed this with the PTA, but I like the recommendation personally. I mean, if I have to speak on behalf of the PTA, I will have to talk to our executive board and get you the input from them. But the other thing, what we could do is recommend the council president or a representative from them. Just in case there is a council president who does not want to or does not have the time to do that. Just like council president also sits on the PI Foundation board. And so if the council president cannot do that, then it can be a representative from the council PTA president. So does that make sense? I mean, what I'm saying is personally, I like that. I just can't speak on behalf of the council PTA board right now because we haven't voted on that.
Okay, it looks like Leslie, you're trying to make a comment. Am I right in that?
I was trying to read the what was going on in the chat, and I am just sitting back and chewing on what I guess just the need or better understand why PTA members would want to be involved with the SHAC. Just want to understand that better.
It would be a connection between SHAC and parents. So just that voice of the parents being the president of the district PTA, then it would be that person would be the one to say what the parents are thinking. Just and we could go back and forth.
Well, that's kind of like me being a physician. I am a parent. I'm represented as a parent for Round Rock. That's kind of what I'm doing. And I'm not affiliated with the PTA. So there's kind of that thought. Because I know PTA kind of has their own avenue and how they work with the schools and with teachers and things like that. So that's why I kind of like the idea of there not being ties between PTA and SHAC. Or at least not initially. I think I would just want to better understand having too much tied into influence, I guess, of what is happening with the SHAC level versus what's happening in the school and in the PTA.
Snehal, do you have any input on that?
Well, in my opinion, partnerships always help because finally we are serving the same community, whether it's SHAC or PTA or all of our district committees, we are serving the same community. The more we can know about each other and work with each other, it helps. So that's my opinion.
Robin, did you have input?
I do. I wanted to kind of add to what Leslie was saying. I think it is perfectly great if someone from the Council of PTAs wants to come and sit in on a SHAC meeting, but there's a difference between being a voting member of the SHAC where you wanted to be on the SHAC, you were nominated to be on the SHAC, rather than being kind of expected to be on the SHAC. And I think that the president of the SHAC should be a voting member because they wanted to be here in the first place. And I think that we should have an open invitation to the Council of PTAs to send a representative who can ask questions, but not vote.
And Jen, if you don't mind, I would like to clarify that just like I had said earlier,
sure.
One second of the Council PTA.
One second, Snehal. So I'm getting a lot of messages that not everyone has a raise hand option. So if you guys want to speak, let me know in the chat and I will call on everyone as I see the requests pop up. So my apologies, Snehal, please finish your comment.
Sorry, I just wanted to clarify that I'm not speaking on as a council president right now, because like I had mentioned, I got on SHAC before I became council president. So I'm serving in my personal capacity on the SHAC. And I can't speak on behalf of the council PTA to make a recommendation either way. I would have to talk to the executive board first. So I'm just clarifying that my opinions are in my personal capacity.
Thank you. So is there a recommendation to approve or remove this recommendation from our master document?
Jen, I had typed in the chat and I had a question before we vote, please.
Oh, yes, please. My apologies.
Yeah, are you proposing this as a trustee appointed position? Because that would be my concern, that we're utilizing a trustee appointed position to have the PTA representative. I think it's very important that these remain parents community positions. If this would be in addition to, I think I'd be more open to it, but not taking up one of those very limited trustee appointments.
Right. This one would be in addition to and not appointed by the Board of Trustees. It would be just an automatic SHAC member and would not be it would not be someone appointed by place.
Jen, I'm sorry, I have my hand up. I think it's really hard to look at these recommendations without them in front of us. So I'm wondering, I assume that we would have been sent these in advance because I know our committee finished ours like a month ago. Can we get this Word document? Because everybody processed differently.
So what we discussed at the last meeting is that we would need to get through the recommendations this time, and then I would send the document after the meeting. And so that way, if we need to delete any of them, we would not have to go through as many, and we wouldn't need to add more information than is needed. We can absolutely send this out. If you guys would prefer, we can stop the meeting right now and I can send this to everyone and you can review it and we can do another meeting if the council so desires. Claudio, you'd like to comment?
Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Oh, okay. I was just, no, again, we're kind of taking away the responsibility of appointments to the, the council, from the board. And another thing, it's every parent's responsibility in regards to addressing whatever particular issues, and the majority of our council members are parents, so the representation is there in that regard, so again, and the other question I had, where is Angie? Is she still with us? She's the secretary, to the council. Is she, I saw Mandy's the one that sent the email.
So
And
Angie no longer
for
works for
everybody's
the
info-
district.
Right.
Okay, so
Yeah,
there it
Angie
goes.
works for the city. Heather's actually the council secretary
Heather? Okay.
for the
No,
council.
because Angie's the one that kept everybody informed and up to date and whatever procedural thing. And this is what I was saying, where's Angie? Good grief. And the other thing for everybody's, I want to go on record that my term is up and I don't seek to continue my appointment, to the council. Okay. So let the record show. Claudio getting off.
I hate to hear that, Claudio, but I totally understand. I'm in your same shoes. Heather, you mentioned that you'd like to speak. Go for it.
So one thing is, I feel very uncomfortable recommending that we appoint someone from the PTA if they haven't even really discussed it amongst themselves. So I would suggest we can table this and maybe next year work on inviting the Round Rock Council PTAs to the SHAC meetings, build that relationship first, and then see maybe should we have more of a formal appointment next year, or just kind of have they come to the meetings, interact with us thing. But we're recommending something when they haven't really been involved.
So I do understand your position. We either vote to include the recommendation or we don't include the recommendation. We can certainly let Judge Aurora Martinez-Jones know that this was here, and if she wants to continue it next year, she can. Sneehall is the sitting council PTA chair, so she has been part of the discussion this year. I just wanted to make sure everyone knew that.
I think I'd like having Sneehall's input and building. I know there's been some opportunities where what we're doing works along with what the PTA is doing, but I don't feel comfortable on this recommendation at this time. And so I would vote to remove it for now.
Sure. So is that a motion or is that just a comment?
I can change it to a motion. I don't know if anyone else has discussion first.
It's totally up to you. If you'd like to make a motion, I will entertain a motion.
And I'm sorry, there are multiple people asking in the chat to have a copy, where we can actually read along right now. Can you put it in the chat, or can you zoom in on your screen, because it's really tiny and I think everybody's trying to follow along and read, but we're just having a hard time.
Let's see. I don't know that I can put it in the chat. Yeah, it's not letting me put it in the chat. And I'm going to put it in a Dropbox link, and I will put the link in the chat in one minute.
Thank you.
So is there a motion to remove this particular recommendation from the report?
I motion to remove this recommendation from the report.
Okay, I've got a motion. Do I have a second?
I second.
Okay, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
All right, any opposed? All right, motion passes, and I will remove that. Please note that I will remove it from what you see on your screen, It will not be removed from what you see in the Dropbox link.
Hey, Jen, I would like to, I don't know if you want an official motion, but I just wanted, I think we need to pause and we need to get this document sent out to everybody via email. Because I'm just not comfortable with like people not being able to know what we're talking about.
Sure, you should have been, everyone had committee meetings to know what was said in their committees. And therefore, I would appreciate if I could control the meeting like I'm supposed to as the chair, Mrs. Faulkner. So everyone has been on the committees and you have had your chance to bring forward the recommendation. This meeting is supposed to be so that each subcommittee can bring their recommendation to the full committee and we can vote on those as a big committee to take those forward to the trustees. We're running out of time to do that. We're in April and these need to go to the trustees in May. So we don't have a lot of time to review this document.
So can I be recognized to speak, please?
Yes, you may speak.
So I do understand that, but we were on our committees. And so I know the recommendations for my committee, but I don't know the recommendations for the other committees. Normally this document is sent out prior to the meeting so that everybody can kind of review it and get comfortable with it. And so that's where I'm feeling a lot of discomfort with, I just want to make sure everybody knows and can read this document. That's all we're asking for is accessibility. That's all.
Sure. So I can appreciate that, but please also remember that this is the very first year that this document has come into the SHAC. When you were the chair, everyone verbalized their recommendations and there wasn't a written document. And that's okay. If we would like to table this discussion, I'm okay with that, but we've got to get through the recommendations and really move forward with what we're taking to the trustees.
If I can add, if it would help with some of the stress of the SHAC, I know our goal is to take them in May, but there's not anything that prevents us from taking these recommendations in June. So I don't know if that helps or not, but if there's a stress over the time and we need a little more time to make sure that the SHAC all feels comfortable, we can take these to the trustees in June.
Jen, just being able to open it in the Dropbox and seeing it in a larger view is very helpful. I don't know if that helps everybody else or they're more concerned with reviewing the content, but personally, I'm happy to be able to see it a little larger.
Sure. Okay. So next, we need to move forward on our agenda. And next up, we've got the Human Development and Sexuality Committee recommendations. Would we like to move forward and talk about these recommendations, or do we want to stop the meeting now and reconvene in a different time once everyone has had the chance to read them?
At least like Jen said, I'm okay now that I have it in the Dropbox and can read along with it, but other people can speak up too, of course.
I have my hand up.
Yes, Kelly?
I would vote for, since we have a little bit longer than May, and I know that myself, I have a hard time reading and listening to conversation at the same time. I kind of need to do one or the other. And so I haven't seen any of this stuff. And I'm also not an auditory learner. So I haven't seen any of this stuff. And on behalf of like the Mental and Behavioral Health Committee, we have 12 recommendations that nobody outside of our committee has seen before too. So I would be a vote for rescheduling and giving everybody time to kind of digest everything, and then coming back when we're all feeling a little bit, I don't know, ready to collaborate.
Me too.
And Jen, can I mention something? We do have the potential, and Mandy, I think we looked at a date already for an additional SHAC meeting just to talk through the rest of this after we get it out for everybody. And so we anticipated that we would need more time to kind of talk through everything. And we already started looking at calendars to see if we could set maybe one additional SHAC meeting to let everybody digest the information, then bring it back and be able to more thoroughly talk about it. So I'm happy for us to use this time frame. Mandy, do you remember when we were talking about that might occur? Because we didn't want to set it out too far, but just to give everybody a chance to digest and then come back for another conversation.
Yes, we put it on this agenda, and I am trying to pull it up now. But the agenda that went out to everyone had an if needed date on it.
It appears that if needed date is April the 20th.
April 20th, 2 weeks. So it'd give everybody 2 weeks to read through all of the recommendations on paper after we have our discussions today, come back and then have more thorough conversations. So I wanted everybody to know that that was a possibility, understanding all the different ways in which we digest information, especially big information like this.
So I will entertain a motion to adjourn the meeting and reconvene on April the 20th.
So motion.
And do I have a second?
Second.
All right. I think we all know that we need to go and read the document, and we will reconvene on April the 20th. Thank you guys so much for your time.
Hey, Jen, I have a question because the document that was added to the Dropbox, I'm not sure if that has has the mental and behavioral health that I sent to you. So I just want to make sure that what folks are going to receive, and you may have already added it and I just haven't seen it yet, but I want to make sure that.
I don't believe it was added, but I will do that and make sure that the one in the Dropbox has that.
I appreciate that.
Time tonight, I will do that.
For sure. Thank you.
Yeah.
And I'm happy to email recommendations out to everyone. That's helpful.
Mandy, if you could go ahead and email them, because I know some people have difficulty with the Dropbox.
Okay, and I'm not sure I can log into them as well. So if each of the subcommittee chairs could just send them directly to me, I can compile them and get them out to the group. If
Thank you so much.
Okay, Jen.
Okay. Thanks, Mandy.